Welcome to Crossroads. Social media is becoming antisocial. And as this happens also, there's a movement to begin replacing human interaction with artificial intelligence. No more talking to other people. Also, on another topic, something major has happened. Well, the State Department, if you might remember, had a large-scale censorship operation. It was the Countering Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Agency. Well, that has now been officially dismantled. We talk about why this matters. And also, speaking of information being altered, there's a new censorship and propaganda focus on Wikipedia. And part of this has led people like Elon Musk to look for alternatives. And Musk has now launched an information site which people can replace Wikipedia with. It's called Grokpedia. And also there are allegations of the systems trying to stop this from happening. Be going into these topics a lot more today, so make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's get started. Now, look, first of all, the social element of social media, the thing that kind of like defines what social media is coming to an end. People just don't interact like they used to. And with this, well, platforms are saying, how do we increase human interaction? And they say, hey, why don't we use AI for it? Have humans interact with non-humans. With this, AI content and a smaller pool of voices basically is starting to dominate the entire internet. And there's also a movement in replacing human interaction with artificial intelligence. They want to have you talking to robots, not people. Now, The Atlantic said this. He said, there's no question that we're becoming less and less social. People have sunk into their phones, enticed into endless, mindless engagement on social media. Over the past 15 years, face-to-face socialization has declined precipitously. The 921 friends I've accumulated, this person says on Facebook, I've always known, and not really friends at all. Now, the man who put his little scorecard in my life was essentially agreeing. And it says this, Zuckerberg of Meta, however, was not admitting a failure. He was pointing toward a new opportunity. It says in Mark Anderson's influential 2023 treatise, the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, this is the big thing because the Techno-Optimist Manifesto basically forms the future of the internet. A lot of these guys are pointing towards. It says the venture capitalist wrote, we believe there is no material problem, whether it can be created by nature or by technology, that can be solved with more technology, suggesting if people are rejecting technology, if they're having problems with maybe like Facebook or social media, the answer is not detoxing. The answer is not less technology. They say the answer is more technology. And it notes this. In the same spirit, Zuckerberg began to suggest the idea that AI chatbots could fill in some of the socialization that people are missing. So if you feel that, gee, I don't really talk to people on Facebook. I have, 500 friends or 1,000 friends, and I don't talk to 1,000 people a month, right? If you even use Messenger on Facebook maybe a few times a week, you might be an exception. So they're saying, how do we change that? Well, have AI chatbots talk to people. And here's what it says. It says Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, X, Reddit, all have aggressively put AI chatbots in front of users. On the podcast, Zuckerberg said that AI probably won't replace in-person connections or real-life connections, at least not right away. It notes that yet he also spoke for the potential for AI therapists and girlfriends to be embodied in virtual space. Of Meta's desire, he couldn't seem to help himself from saying to produce always-on video chat with an AI that looks, gestures, smiles, and sounds like a real person. So in other words, you're like, gee, I'm so lonely in my life. Let me see what's happening on the internet. You turn on the internet, and the girl or the man of your dreams pops up in video and says, gee, what can I do for you today? Beautiful. And that's your social interaction, apparently. Now, notice that Meta is working to make that desire a reality, and it's hardly leading the charge. Many companies are doing the same, and many people already use AI for companionship, sexual gratification, mental health care, And what Zuckerberg described, what is now unfolding, is the beginning of the new digital era, more actively antisocial than the last, right? You getting this? The new digital era is when we all start interacting with our computers. You know, you ever like date somebody, or maybe you're married and your spouse is like just glued to their phone. You're like, well, why don't you marry it? Why don't you put a ring on that phone? And you're with it more than me. And they're like, the old saying was, well, gee, I'm sorry, let me put it down. Let's have a real conversation. The answer now is maybe I will. That's how we've actually changed socially. The new answer is maybe I will. And so what they're doing, if you are addicted to your phone or your computer and you feel that it's cutting you off from the world, they believe they can change that, not by maybe, I don't know, not cutting you off from like normal interactions because you're so addicted to it, but by instead making you more addicted to it by inserting artificial interaction into the machine itself. That's what they're doing. Now, you might say some people are like, well, gee, I'm never going to do this. I'm like, why would I ever do that? I think for those of us who maybe have memories of the pre-internet part of life, maybe that's easier for us. Younger generations are going to go headlong into this. Younger generations are going to be much more pulled into it. And younger generations that tend to be much less socially adept will more likely be using this, of course. It says this as well. Generative AI will automate a large number of jobs, removing people from the workplace, but it will almost certainly sap humanity from these social spheres as well. So you're like, gee, I have no friends, I have no girlfriend, I have no job. The robot now does the job I was going to do, learn to code, become a writer. Well, there's AI for that. Well, gee, I guess I'll go home and, eat the bug juice or something. I don't know what they'll have. No more of that. Can't find a job. You might say, well, gee, maybe I'll go talk to my friend. Well, lo and behold, you don't have any friends either. Guess I'll go, play on the internet. Gee, I wish I had, a spouse or something in my life. Gee, I don't have that either. Well, luckily, the internet's there for you, too. So it will replace, effectively, all the basic forms of what formed normal life previously. That's what some people want. Now, personally, I find this concept terrible. I think this is a terrible place for humanity to go. I think effectively this will turn us from being human to something else, and not in a good way. I don't think this is the kind of transhumanist, evolution of man like the old people imagined. This is a de-evolution. This is a sinking down. This represents us becoming less socially adept, less active, less intelligent even, and less able to even understand the machines which come to control us even more. I don't think this will be healthy for anybody. But this is also where the world is heading if we don't change it. This is the direction things are going in. It's not like it's just Zuckerberg doing it for Meta. Again, X is doing it with, X, which formerly known as Twitter. Reddit's doing it. This is a whole of internet shift. A lot of employers are doing it, even tracking workers like your parts in a machine. This is the new reality. This is the new reality if we don't change it. And I would note also, what is causing this human disengagement from the internet or human engagement? Well, it's interesting actually because you're seeing two things happen. So some of the people who run these big companies, they're noticing people, although more addicted to their phones, although more addicted to their computers, are also socially disengaging from interacting with it. If you all remember what it used to be like social media used to be pretty dang interesting. Social media, you logged on, Facebook for those old timers, you might remember, it says, what are you doing right now? And it said, right now I am, and then you'd write whatever you're doing currently. Going to the store, doing homework, listening to music. And of course, that was social media. Social media was focused on the social element. This is what I'm currently doing. And then they removed that. They removed that part of it. Remember, it was MySpace. MySpace was the pre-Facebook social media. And MySpace, you could do like basic coding and make it your space. You could have music come on. You could change the colors. We all thought that was super cool. You could basically code your own web page. And everybody found that very interesting back then. Social media was human. Social media was direct. Social media was about connecting people. Social media was about creating your own space. And the internet at the time was designed around that. This was a time when the internet and the vision of it was we can build anything. We've built the external world. We're going to build the artificial world. And we're all going to dream together of what it will be. That is what we were doing. That whole side now where we used to dream big, that whole side where we used to create, that whole side where we used to interact, that part of the internet is dying. People do not comment like they used to. People do not post like they used to. People do not interact like they used to. And the big question is, well, what caused this, right? Because look, what's happening now, because the majority of people are disengaging, it means that two types of things are now posting. Very opinionated people, like me, I guess, and us here, and AI basically. So you're getting a handful of influencers, and you're getting artificial intelligence basically dominating the mind space of the internet, right? What caused this, though? What caused the mass disengagement from the internet? If you were to ask me, I would say censorship. I would say cancel culture. I would say that there were certain businesses, certain organizations, NGOs, the news establishment, the media, that made it dangerous to say what you think on the internet. If you say, I feel like a man today, some people might say, well, gee, that's transphobic. Gee, that's sexist. Or gee, have you considered gender transition therapy? If you say, you know what, I got in an argument today, I'm having a bad day, they might attack you. If you say, hey, I'm going to go vote because I like this guy, half the internet might lash out at you. If you say that you have an opinion, like maybe there's a news article and you comment to the either for or against something, you might be attacked, you might be canceled, you might have people trying to get you fired. You might have it so that people list your home address and people go outside and threaten you. The danger that has been presented to every single person through cancel culture, mass censorship, and everything else has made it dangerous to state what you believe. It has made it dangerous to speak out, dangerous to really just go and where it used to be a light interaction, I'm going to go on the internet and talk to my friends. It has now become a potentially destructive interaction. Well, I don't want to say what I think because people are going to attack me. And when that happens, well, most people disengage, and that is what is now taking place. Most people have disengaged from the internet, although they consume a lot of it. And I'd say also part of the reason people are now moving towards AI. Why would young kids, I don't know, maybe old people do it too, but why would young people want to have an AI boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Why would you want that? It's not going to date you. It's not going to show up in person and, make you cookies or something like that. It's not going to keep you company. I don't know, maybe on the internet it will. Why would they want that? The simple answer is it is safe. It is safe. And what people want is interaction that is safe. That is the new craving. Safe interaction. I just want somebody who's not crazy. I just want somebody not addicted to drugs. I just want somebody I can talk to and share my feelings with and have a conversation with who's not going to flip on me. I just want a safe connection, and that is what AI is offering. AI is coming to people and saying, I'm safe. I will approve of anything you say, no matter how crazy it is. Welcome to the new safe space, which is now the whole internet, because we've created this by making it dangerous. Here's your little warm safety blanket. Tuck in, because this is all you got. And that's the future we're moving towards right now, if we don't change it. Now, also on the topic of mass censorship, cancel culture, and the like, well, it turns out this wasn't just businesses doing it. There was even a government element to it, and the State Department was part of this. And also the State Department, they counter foreign information manipulation and interference agency, the Disinfo Center. It's now been dismantled. They've gone away. I'll be talking more about this after a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. Mass censorship. Well, if you had the feeling that, gee, was I being censored? You probably were, okay? It really ramped up after the 2016 elections, and, well, a lot of that was not organic. A lot of it was being done intentionally. In 2016, it was a coordinated campaign pushed by social networks, businesses, NGOs, and big old corporate media. The big corporate media establishment. And also, after 2016, Trump pushed out of office. 2020, Biden comes in. What happened? Biden came in and established it in the government. There were even bigger censorship systems put in place, and they even included government agencies. One of them being CISA, C-I-S-A, the other one being under the State Department, one of the major ones. And one of the key systems for this has now been brought to an official end. Destroyed, gone. And it's announced right here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he says, quote, over the last decade, 10 years, Americans have been slandered, fired, charged, and even jailed for simply voicing their opinions. That ends today. Again, back to the point. Gee, why don't people interact with the internet anymore? It's because Americans were slandered, fired, charged, and even jailed for voicing their opinions. Gee, maybe that's why. Anybody remember COVID lockdowns? And during the COVID lockdown, if you were like, I think it's kind of weird that I'm told to lock myself in my home, but all these people are allowed to go out and protest and burn down buildings and riot. Why are they allowed to do that and not even get arrested? But if I go outside to buy groceries and don't wear a face mask, I might get punished. Is something wrong here? And then, you say that on the internet, and next thing you know, it's like you've been kicked off the, social media or something. Does anybody remember that? Does anybody remember when that was happening? Does anybody remember when you can go on the internet and be like, I kind of have a religion, and my religion tells me that I probably should not listen if somebody's trying to force me to put something into my body I don't want. I just don't agree with these mandates. I just don't agree with them. And next thing you know, you're being investigated by your company, and you're being shut down or you're being kicked off the internet. And you're like, well, gee, I thought I had freedom of speech, and what happened to my body, my choice? I guess that doesn't really apply when the narrative doesn't fit. A lot of people experience this, right? And so on these points, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says, quote, that ends today. That ends today. He says, I am announcing the closure of the State Department's Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference, formerly the Global Engagement Center, the GEC, which cost taxpayers more than $50 million per year and actively silenced and censored the voices of Americans they were supposed to be serving. Which is interesting because I remember talking about this and I was being attacked. People were like, Josh, that's not censorship. You're a dangerous conspiracy theorist to claim that the government is censoring people. And I'm like, well, they built a government agency for it. That doesn't censor people. They just flag stuff and give recommendations. They don't have to censor anybody. It's the corporations. It's the billionaires and the millionaires doing it. And they wouldn't do it if you weren't saying dangerous things. Turns out I was right. Turns out we were all right, in fact. So applaud yourselves because we were right the whole time, right? But on this point, basically this whole, engagement center, the censorship system, this was one of a handful of systems. There were actually several like this. And what they were doing was this. Representatives from these government organizations, they were flagging content on social networks. And the way they had it set up was that local government officials, NGOs, like non-governmental organizations, which is crazy because you have these like literal activists, they could flag things. They had engagement with this government center. They could send recommendations. Hey, this person's making dangerous statements. This person said something offensive. This person has opinions and viewpoints I don't like. This person's questioning this policy. They would flag these posts, send them in, and this engagement center worked as kind of like the processing facility for censorship. So they'd get requests for it, they'd have people searching for it, and then they would engage with social media platforms, websites, and otherwise saying, hey, you have a person spreading dangerous misinformation, do what you will. They couldn't tell them to censor, but a lot of the heads of the social media, including like Zuckerberg, when he testified before Congress, they said they felt they were pressured to censor. And they were threatened by members of Congress previously being asked, why do you not censor? And so, as they're being threatened to be investigated, as they're being threatened with criminal action because they have illegal content or something like that, as they're facing these threats, and then at the same time, that administration was telling them you have this and that and this, you'd better censor it. What do? They censored it. And so this worked as a hand-in-glove type of censorship. And the argument was, well, you'd think you have the Constitution protecting you from this. You would think the Constitution says, freedom of speech. The government cannot censor you. The argument was, well, the government can't censor you, but a private business can. And if you create a public monopoly, right, a social media site that is granted a monopoly through grants, services, protections, and otherwise, that is able to basically become the funnel for all communication, if they censor, it is not censorship. And also they would say, if the government recommended but did not force censorship, that was also not censorship because the business was censoring it, not the government. And so they use this public-private partnership to facilitate violations of the Constitution, going against your constitutional rights to express your beliefs, your opinions, and everything else on the internet. And that was how it worked. That was how they were censoring people. Which, by the way, Crossroads were still demonetized on YouTube. We're still demonetized from this whole thing. We have still not been uncensored. We're still facing this. And on a related point also, there are also allegations that former special counsel Jack Smith, the guy who was investigating the president of the United States, and again, Trump when Biden was in office, Jack Smith had received private baking records to target Trump Media and Technology Group. It turns out he was targeting Trump in ways that may have been illegal. The Gateway Pundit says this. It says, in a shocking revelation, special counsel Jack Smith secretly subpoenaed J.P. Morgan Chase for the private banking records of Trump Media and Technology Group. Brief background on this. After Trump left office, 2020, Biden comes in. Trump was being investigated, targeted, raided, the whole 9 yards. Trump was kicked off of Twitter before Elon Musk bought it and brought him back. And then what did Trump do? Trump started his own social media, Truth Social. And part of that, they also launched the Trump Media and Technology Group. They're still claiming they're going to do other stuff with it. They're saying they're going to start a media website, like a media organization. They want to do streaming services like a news channel or like a video channel. They have Truth Social, which was supposed to be like the replacement for X or Twitter. And that was the corporation they started for, the Trump Media and Technology Group. And it turned out that Jack Smith, the special counsel, was targeting it in ways that may have resulted in censorship, debanking, target it in ways that went beyond the scope of just an investigation. It notes that he did this despite the company not existing at the time of January 6th, because what the special counsel was supposed to be investigating was the whole scandal around January 6th. Did Trump order people to go protest and so on? What was the real story? Was the whole thing around him questioning the integrity of the 2020 election a plot, or was it legitimate? That was the special counsel investigation, but Jack Smith went beyond that to stuff that happened afterwards and even went after private businesses. It says the move uncovered by Trump Media CEO Devin Nunes represents yet another case of the Justice Department extending its political reach far beyond reason or legality. It says Trump Media became a public company in 2024, years after the events that Smith's investigation supposedly focused on. 2024, what does that mean? It means leading up to the 2024 elections, raising questions. Was this about interfering with the 2024 elections? Was this about 2020? Or is this them trying to deplatform the leading candidate in the 2024 elections at a time when the elections were happening? Was this censorship under the guise of a criminal investigation? Good question, right? It says this. It says, yet Smith's Arctic Frost operation, Arctic Frost was the name of the special counsel's investigation that was spying on members of Congress, spying on just about every single major Republican organization. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of individuals and businesses and organizations. They were targeting Turning Point. They were targeting influencers. They were targeting members of Congress. Basically, every prominent Republican voice was being spied on and investigated under the Arctic Frost operation. And a big question is, again, was this about legitimate criminal investigation, or was this about political attacks, censorship, and the weaponization of the government? I don't know. We'll find out because they're investigating it now. And notice that Smith's Arctic Frost operation went after Truth Social's bank records as though it were somehow connected to the Capitol protests. Again, going after bank records that didn't even exist when January 6 happened. It says that alone raises the question, what possible justification could exist for subpoenaing a company that did not exist at the time of the alleged crime? None, unless the motive was political, they state. And it says this further in. For a company headquartered in Florida, such cooperation with an unfounded federal demand would have violated both state and federal laws, meaning possibly, we'll see, innocent until proven guilty. They're suggesting the actions of the special counsel's office may have violated federal law and state law, meaning the investigation into crime was operating illegally. It says yet the bank went even further because, again, he was subpoenaing information from the banking for these banking records. The bank went even further. It says this, at the height of Trump's media public offering in early 2024, just as Truth Social was preparing to go public and raise $250 million, And also, notably, right when the elections were kicking off and going into full charge, what happened? J.P. Morgan abruptly debanked the company, which turned into a scandal that may have affected the elections, which turned into a scandal that eliminated a lot of money that Trump could have potentially used for the 2024 elections, meaning this interfered with the 2024 elections. And so if the special counsel's office was investigating, allegedly, interference in the 2020 elections, but was doing things that effectively interfered itself with the 2024 elections, was it not doing the very thing that it was supposedly investigating? If that sounds like a pattern, it's because it is. We've seen over and over again that the accusations are often the actions of the guilty. The people making the allegations tend to be the ones who are carrying out the crime. We've seen this with the Trump-Russia hoax, where it was formed through Russian disinformation, accusing Trump of spreading Russian disinformation. We've seen this with the former special counsel Robert Mueller, accusing Trump of all these things when in fact it was meant to investigate the sitting president and undermine him using a basis of false information. We've seen this, it seems now, even throughout the Biden administration, where actions to allegedly carry out criminal investigations were being done to actually interfere with the recent elections in 2024. And again, they were doing things that effectively caused financial troubles, interfered with finances, and caused scandals that the media latched onto for the purposes of spreading misinformation in order to interfere with the election. The very thing that Trump was accused of is what they were doing, whether intentionally or not, and we'll find out, hopefully. It says J.P. Morgan later told Fox News that it does not close accounts for political reasons. But Nunes, it says, the account shows otherwise. The timing of the debanking, the secret subpoena, and the coordination with the Justice Department point to something far larger, a pattern of financial institutions doing the dirty work of partisan prosecutors, meaning weaponization of government for political purpose. It says this is not an isolated case either. We now know that Smith's team also reached into Verizon and AT&T, phone providers, for Republicans' phone records, continuing the same playbook used during the Russia hoax that Nunes exposed 7 years ago. Meaning, again, the Trump Justice Department is now carrying out investigations into the alleged weaponization of the federal government, not only throughout the Biden administration, but even going into Trump's first term in office. The Trump-Russia hoax, this whole investigation into him, alleging was that actually a criminal investigation, or was it individuals basically spreading false information with the intent of trying to remove the sitting president from office? Were all of the investigations when Biden was in office part of a legitimate criminal investigation, or were they meant to be a partisan weaponization of the government to destroy one political party in the United States, to create an eternal one-party dictatorship? I don't know. Currently, though, we are seeing people getting subpoenaed. We are seeing people charged. We are seeing broader investigations taking place. Not all of these are related to these scandals. Some of it are related to other things, but as I've mentioned previously, that's not what's important. What's important is that when they launch an investigation into an individual, it looks like you've misfiled something on this home. You've been lying about your taxes for this home. We're going to launch an investigation into you. What then happens? They launch the investigation. What do they get? Banking records, communications, emails, phone records, everything. How does that fit into the broader picture? What do they need to investigate this whole scandal, whether it was 2020 or 2024 or 2016 for that matter? Well, they need banking records, communications, text messages, emails, phone records, and everything else to find out whether there was collusion, whether in fact there was a big conspiracy to target, attack, and try to undermine one political party by weaponizing these systems. That is what is now being investigated. That is now what is happening. And we'll have to find out whether it's the case or not, or whether it's, as the other former special counsel says, just an issue of confirmation bias. Pay no heed to the man behind the mirror. Now, also on the point of censorship, though, there's a new censorship program, and this one is from Wikipedia. And Wikipedia, it turns out, has been, posting a lot of false information, curating its information from activist news organizations, eliminating independent news organizations from its curation, publishing things that are outright false, publishing hit pieces, not showing the other side. And it turns out some of this may be intentional because Wikipedia is tied in with various organizations, and such as, for example, the Tides Foundation. And Wikipedia has, of course, been publicly stating a political agenda or a social agenda rather than a dedication to actual accurate information. They're an activist organization. And again, they've stated this publicly as part of their operations with Tides. As part of this, though, Elon Musk has now launched his very own alternative to the information site, and it's called Grokpedia, which is incredible, actually. If you use it, you'll find that it has information that Wikipedia does not include. And a lot of the big corporate media are flipping out. They are freaking out because if you show Grokpedia results next to Wikipedia results, you see truth and you see narrative. You see truth and you see lies. It's also now being alleged something else. People are trying to stop Grokpedia from being able to take form. It's actually being censored and suppressed. Newsbusters says this: big tech behemoths have gone to great lengths to promote Wikipedia. In fact, I would note, if you type something in your average Google search engine, one of the first results you'll get will probably be a Wikipedia result. They say now Google has been busted actively suppressing an emerging competitor. Following the launch of Grokpedia, ex-owner Elon Musk's AI-driven online encyclopedia, Google Search offered an outrageous response to users even searching for Grokpedia. Gee, Google, where can I find this brand new Wikipedia alternative, Grokpedia? And instead of giving you that, Google will state, did you mean Wikipedia? And immediately below this, Google taunted users, it says, with the least impartial source possible, a Wikipedia article on Grokpedia. Imagine that. Now, what do you call that? Anti-competitive behavior, maybe? If it's done intentionally. Antitrust violations, if done intentionally, right? If done intentionally. Was this done intentionally? I don't know. We may find out soon because we'll see if Elon Musk takes action on this, but we may find out soon. On another topic, though, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, he's describing what he says is an adversary that is affecting the fighting capability of the United States. Watch this.
Today, I'd like to talk to you about an adversary that poses a threat, a very serious threat, to the United States of America. This adversary is one of the world's last bastions of central planning. It governs by dictating in 5-year plans. From a single capital, it attempts to impose its demands across time zones, continents, oceans, and beyond. With brutal consistency, it stifles free thought and crushes new ideas. It disrupts the defense of the United States and places the lives of our men and women in uniform at risk. Perhaps this sounds like the former Soviet Union, but that enemy is long gone. The foe I'm talking about is more subtle and implacable. You may think I'm describing one of the last decrepit dictators of the world, but their day too is almost certainly past. And they cannot match the size and strength of this adversary, nor am I talking about the Chinese Communist Party. The adversary I'm talking about is much closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy. Not the people, but the process. Not the civilians, but the system. Not the men and women in uniform, but the uniformity of thought and action that is too often imposed on them.
Interesting, right? The uniformity of thought and action imposed on the American armed forces. Now, I'd say that's very interesting. I looked into it. I don't think he's talking about what some in the past have called the military-industrial complex. That's like the business side of the military, right? There's the military contractors, the military companies, the arms manufacturers, like taxpayer money, like the military-industrial complex. That's one thing. What Hegseth is talking about here is something else, though. He's talking about the uniformity of thought and action that's being forced on the American armed forces. In other words, the thing not allowing them to act individually, the thing not allowing them to act in a way that, again, thought and action, to act independently. And this is a big deal, right? Any veterans out there might understand this pretty well, that if you're on the ground and you're maneuvering and you're dealing with a very complex situation, you need to be able to think on your feet. You need to be able to strategize. You need to be able to, flank the enemy or outsmart them, and you need to take rapid action. What you don't want to do is be like, gee, headquarters, we're being shot at. Am I allowed to shoot back at the enemy? And they're like, hold on right there. Let me find out if you're allowed to return fire. And you're like, okay, guess I'll just sit here and get shot at for I don't know how long. And then, you sit there and get shot at for a while. And the phone call comes back. Yeah, maybe, but, be careful. Or no, it's best you don't shoot back. I don't know if that ever happens to y'all. But this, of course, has been the experience of a lot of the American armed forces. During Vietnam, Congress voted and made it so that the American warfighter, our young men being sent abroad and fight in Vietnam, were not allowed to shoot at the enemy in a war that revolved around ambushes unless they shot at you first. So you'd have American armed forces, like our troops, while the media is doing this whole charade, oh, our young men being thrown into the fire. The big corporate media were in cahoots with this agenda. You would have guys at bases taking mortar fire, right? The big tubes, and they launch the explosives out of them, right? Blowing up the bases. You're getting shot at from mortars. It's not that hard to counter it, right? It's not that hard to counter a mortar. You just shoot you just shoot to where the place where the bomb came from, right? Boom, done. Goodbye, foreign mortar team, right? Simple as that. You weren't allowed to do that. In Vietnam, if you were getting mortar fire, and this was because of what Congress voted for at the time and passed and signed into law and the media was advocating for, if you were taking mortar fire, you had to call in permission to shoot back. Gee, headquarters, we're taking mortar fire. Are we allowed to shoot them? Hold your horses, sit tight, and you have to sit there and get bombed and wait for approval. Finally, approval comes through. They push it up through command, and they push it back down, and they say, okay, you're allowed to shoot back now. You shoot back, and you hit nothing. And why do you hit nothing? Because the Viet Cong at the time knew this. They knew it because they watched American television. And what they would do is their mortar team was here, and they'd just move it here. And then they'd shoot again. And then they'd have to repeat the process. Gee, we're taking mortar fire again. Am I allowed to shoot back? Can I shoot back now? And then, repeat. They just moved the teams. And because of this, how many Americans died? How many Americans were murdered because of this stupid law? How many people lost their lives when the media was crying about all our young men? How much of that was caused by these narratives they were spreading, these false claims? How much of it was caused by that? You'd have entire troop movements, right? And you weren't allowed to shoot them unless they shot at you first, and they'd be waving and making fun of our young men, walking by, hi, Americans, hi, and you weren't allowed to shoot them. They'd go and set up ambushes and then kill our young men. That's what was happening. So when Hegseth talks about the uniformity of thought and action imposed on American forces, I think this is what he's talking about. I know a lot of you say, well, that was Vietnam. Some of the same things were happening in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some of the same things were happening. The American warfighter was not allowed to fight a war. The American warfighter had to become a little diplomat. You had to go and try to talk peace. The American warfighter was not allowed to fight unless the other guy tried to kill you first. And a lot of Americans died in ways that were totally unnecessary because of this uniformity of thought and action. Now, on that point, too, I think what Hegseth is talking about is not just this, like rules of engagement. I think he's also talking about the command structure. And I know a lot of guys who, look, okay, so what makes Pete Hegseth unique is this. Hegseth is not a general, right? He's now the head of, he's now the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of War. Normally, when you put a person in that position, you take it from the top brass, right? A general, a four-star, something like that. You don't take it from the boots on the ground guys. There's very different cultures between a lot of the higher up officers and the guys who just kind of join because they want to fight for their country. A lot of the higher positions, it's more of a political role, and I'm not bashing it all. Like my grandfather was a captain, right? I'm not bashing this one bit, but you have a difference in culture, and a lot of the guys on the ground, they don't like that political culture, and a lot of them feel that they get ordered to do things that don't make a lot of sense, right? Now, a lot of Americans going back to World War II, they will say the greatest generation, and they remember what made America such a formidable fighting force. Do you know what made America such a formidable fighting force? Is Americans were impossible to predict. Americans were impossible to predict. You'd read their manual. Well, comrade, it looks like they say that you have to do this in this situation, and Americans just don't do it, right? Americans did not fight by the book. You'd say, okay, in a normal situation, they'd say, do this, and, Billy Joe is up in a tree shooting at you. You know what I mean? He climbed a tree and he's shooting down at you. Well, the book says they should act like this, and they're not doing it. Why is that? It's because Americans, they fight and they strategize and they move like you're playing football, like American football, and that's how they fight wars. They move, they strategize, they move, they strategize, they move, they strategize, and you can't put a damper on that. You can't clamp that down, because when you clamp that down, that's when you eliminate one of the greatest elements that make the American warfighter such an unpredictable and dangerous element on the battlefield. They think for themselves. And I'd say actually that's one of the defining traits of Americans. We like to think for ourselves. And if you eliminate that with the uniformity of thought and action, you end up with guys like the Soviets had, where, hey, march, comrade. If you run into a wall, call in permission to walk around it, because you're not allowed to walk around that wall unless you get permission first. You can't fight a war like that. And it's why, our young men have wiped the floor with those guys when they're allowed to, but they're not allowed to anymore. And so we'll see what happens. Hegseth says he's going to change this. We'll see what happens with it. On another topic, though, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, she's now under criminal investigation. ABC 7 says this. It says, a 7 News I-Team exclusive has uncovered more troubling details of D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's mysterious trips worldwide. 7 News has discovered that the nation of Qatar paid $61,930 for Mayor Bowser and 4 staff members to fly to the Middle East in 2023. It says D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said she takes trips around the country and the world to promote and strengthen the district's economy. But what does Qatar have to do with Washington, D.C.'s economy? I don't know. But 7 News I-Team investigative reporter Scott Taylor discovered some pretty shoddy record-keeping around these visits. It says, as far as 7 News has been able to discover during our ongoing investigation, Mayor Bowser does not turn in any travel expense records at all. The district has no records for Muriel Bowser's trips to the Masters Golf Tournament in Georgia, or trips to Los Angeles, Miami, Mar-a-Lago, Dubai, or Doha in Qatar. And it says the pricey trip to Qatar is the one that they're focusing on here because there's apparently others. And it says the 7 News I team asked the mayor's office directly who paid for her trip to Dubai for a climate change conference. It says first, Susan Castillo, the mayor's director of communications, told 7 News in a July 9th, 2024 email that the trip was paid for by the D.C. Chamber of Commerce. So, is this shoddy record keeping? Is it done legally through like the Chamber of Commerce? We will see, but I will note something important. This could be a big deal. Because when else have we seen this? Okay, pop quiz. When have we seen the mayor of a major city face criminal charges for allegedly getting foreign payments? And this could be taking foreign trips. Answer. New York City Mayor Eric Adams faced charges that were almost identical to this. He faced criminal charges for basically the same thing. And he was allegedly getting money tied to Turkey. Now, the added allegation was that was tied to political favors. And so the question with Muriel Bowser, was she just getting foreign gifts? Was it legitimate payments? Or was there an expectation that she would give something in return? The expectation she would give something in return is the thing that really matters. Because again, that's when you get a criminal indictment like Mayor Adams faced. Now, I should note briefly, the Justice Department did drop the charges against Adams in February, and they've not yet said anything about Muriel Bowser, so we'll see if anything actually happens with this. But also one more thing, speaking of investigations into alleged foreign ties, there is also a push for investigations into Code Pink and possible ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, what is Code Pink? One of the major organizations involved in the riots and protests all around America. How does it tie to the Chinese Communist Party? Well, the head of Code Pink is married to a guy who lives in Shanghai, a billionaire, and apparently he's one of the big money factors behind a lot of the chaos in America. Now, the Washington Free Beacon says this. Senator Tom Cotton on Friday petitioned the Justice Department to open a federal investigation into left-wing activist group Code Pink for providing material support to foreign terrorist organizations and serving as an unregistered agent of the Chinese government, according to a letter shared with the Washington Free Beacon. It says Code Pink, known for disrupting congressional proceedings with an anti-Israel outbursts, has worked on behalf of the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine members. And it says, calling into question whether it has provided material support to the United States government-designated terrorist organization, Cotton wrote. It says the group has also received more than $1.4 million in funding from socialist tech executive Neville Roy Singham, who is married to the group's co-founder, Jody Evans, and was identified in 2023 as the driving force behind a global Chinese propaganda campaign. Interesting, right? So if you ask, what is the tie between all these, activist groups and chaos in China? Well, this is where a lot of people are looking. It says Cotton says that Singham's cash, which accounts for around 25% of Code Pink's budget, suggests that the group is serving as an unregistered foreign agent for the communist regime. It says its parallel work with PFLP tied organizations like Sham Charity, Sime Down, the senator added, raises serious questions about whether Code Pink has provided material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations, and adds as well that both issues warrant an immediate federal probe from Attorney General Pam Bondi, Cotton contended, and he argued in the letter that Code Pink's activities could amount to violations of a Foreign Agents Registration Act, which require advocates for foreign governments to disclose their work. And if he's based in Shanghai doing this, the other question is, well, can they investigate his finances because it's in China? How do you do that? If his finances are in China, whether he's Chinese or not, if he's living in China, working in China, doing his business in China, Well, do you call that a Chinese operation? Well, good question. Maybe we'll find out. And folks, a lot of stuff going on right now. Before we jump into questions, our new documentary, Truth Under Fire, The Framing of Charlie Kirk, that comes out November 19th. It's going to be completely free to watch. All you need to do if you want to watch it, register on epochtv.com, EPOCHTV.com. It's been a lot of work putting this documentary together. As you've seen, I've been traveling on the road I'm on the road right now, but we're doing an event today in California. It's been a lot of work putting this documentary together. We interviewed a lot of great people for it. The link to watch this upcoming documentary is in the description below. And before we jump into questions, let me show you a trailer for the documentary right now. How was Charlie Kirk framed by the narrative system?
An anti-Semite, as a purveyor of misinformation, as being someone on what they call the hard right.
He's been slandered and lied about by people on the left.
They want to create an atmosphere of fear where I'll stop doing what I'm doing because I'm worried that I'm going to get murdered.
Charlie Kirk was shot down on a college campus, not with a weapon in his hand, but with a microphone.
What kind of threats did Charlie face, and did he ever confide in you about these?
He would say, you know, this is a dark time spiritually, pray for me.
Now, look, not only that, I'm going to be hosting a special live Q&A, in addition to the normal Q&A. This is going to be on the documentary at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the premiere day. That's going to be Wednesday, November 19th. Wednesday that day, we're still going to do the morning show as normal, but I will do an additional live Q&A for the documentary, 9 p.m. Eastern Time for the premiere, so be sure to join for that. The link for that is also in the description. And that said, well, let's jump into some questions. And also, I apologize. I've been going a lot longer than I normally do. I think I just, maybe I have more opinions. I don't know. If you're wondering where I'm at, I'm actually in California currently at our office here. And we're doing a big event today, actually with Rob Schneider. So we're doing a fundraiser locally here. I should be doing events like this more often, actually. I don't have anything organized on it yet. We'll probably I'll start finding ways where I can tell you all about it. I have a lot of stuff in the works, and I've been, as you know, I've been on the road quite a bit. First question from Cal CYDH. You're saying, anyone else think the term artificial intelligence is problematic? People don't seem to use real intelligence anymore. Good point. Can you have artificial intelligence if there's no such thing as unartificial intelligence? Is it just intelligence if we've lost all other forms of intelligence? Good question. Good question. Seymour Butts, you're saying technology will solve all the problems caused by technology. Seymour, they should have you write their manifestos. They should have you write. They could have just saved all that hot air by just saying that. You know, well, gee, sir, there's so much bureaucracy. How do we solve this bureaucracy? Dear sir, we need more bureaucracy. That's how we solve the bureaucracy. Gee, it seems the children are stuck on their computers all the time. How do we get the children to interact? I got an idea. Let's add artificial interaction to the computers. Ha, amazing. Why didn't I think of that? You're such a genius. How do we fix the communication problem when people forget how to communicate because they're communicating with their computers? How about we give them a robot to talk to so they can pretend they're communicating on their computers? Great. What a wonderful future we're looking into. Gaze into the soul of the modern youth. Do it while you can stand it. Things are going to get weird, okay? Things are going to get really weird, so get ready for it. Another question. Nancy K. V1, you're saying during COVID, we had to speak in code. We did. I know I did, because I know doing a show, there were certain things that if I said them, they'd like, delete my channel, right? Like, I mean, I've already kind of gone as far down that road as you probably can. Like, I don't know. Maybe I have poor survival instinct, but I've kind of said all the things I'm not allowed to say, which is why we're still demonetized, right? We talked about, when COVID came out, what did I do? I did a documentary tracing the origins of COVID. When they were talking about, vaccine mandates, we're not forcing you to take it. I did a special feature investigating how the military is forcing members of the service members to take the vaccine. When they were saying, this big scandal January 6th, and, this is the narrative, what did I do? I did the real story of January 6th and blew the narrative out of the water. I've kind of done that, maybe to the detriment of my well-being. But I will also say I've noticed the funny patterns, right? Okay, so question. Does anybody remember in 2016, how would you spot a Trump voter? Okay? Let's go back to 2016, the 2016 elections. Hillary Clinton is, wishing happy birthday to herself. Happy birthday to this future president. Trump was polling at 5%, and the media was already printing out the Trump loses front pages, right? And what was that based on? It was based on polling, because they were going around, who do you plan to vote for? Republican or Democrat? Hillary or Trump? And of course, in the polling, they're saying, 90% say they're going to vote for Hillary, 10% undecided or something like that. I don't know, maybe 2% Trump or something. I don't know. It was like that, right? I remember laughing to myself because I was thinking the polling is not going to work because nobody's going to tell these people they're going to vote for Trump, because if they tell them they're going to vote for Trump, they're going to get attacked. If you told somebody in 2016 you were going to vote for Trump, they'd call you a racist, they'd call you a sexist, they'd call you a homophobe, they'd call you a fascist, they'd call you a Russian agent, they'd call you every name in the book. They might physically attack you. They might have physically Bilbo Baggins, give me that ring, look, and jumped at you, look, you know what I mean? It would have been like that, lunging at you. It would have been like that. And so what happens? Nobody's going to say they're going to vote for the guy, obviously, because you've made it dangerous to say you're going to vote for the guy. And so when you had these pollsters going around, who are you going to vote for? How would you spot a Trump supporter? This is how. And I used to laugh about it. If you talk to a Hillary supporter and you're like, who are you going to vote for? Hillary Clinton. She's going to save us from the racists, or something like that. You ask a Trump supporter, who are you going to vote for? And what do they say? They'd be like, well, I like to consider a lot of things. I like to consider a lot of things. I like to look at, different media and kind of make my own decisions. That was a Trump voter, okay? That's how you spotted him. Back in 2016, that was how you spotted a Trump voter. And I used to laugh about it. During COVID, as Nancy KV1 is noting, how do you, we had to speak in code. How did you spot somebody who didn't believe in face masks or, didn't want to take the vaccine, right? Hey, are you going to get, are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? If you took it, yeah, of course I am. I need to save the world. I'm not one of those dangerous conspiracy theorists. And then you ask someone else, are you vaccinated? They'd be like, I thought about it. I thought about it. I'm considering it. Unless they're really opinionated, that was the response you got. I'm thinking, I'm considering it. I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking about it. Right? That's how you spotted them, right? Secret Basserings, you're saying disinformation departments in China are called ministries of truth. Orwell was definitely talking about today's China. He was. Okay, so I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you want to read something really interesting, the most interesting part of the book, 1984, is not even the book, not the main story. The interesting part is the index. If you can find an old copy of 1984 that has the index, George Orwell actually explains the background thinking of all of his concepts. He explains how he came up with newspeak, how he came up with the concept of black-white, how he came up with, Ingsoc, English socialism. The regime was English socialism, Ingsoc. He explains all this. The entire book was actually based in his observances of things that were already taking place in the United Kingdom when he wrote the book. He was looking at the censorship, he was looking at the narratives, he was looking at revisionist history, and he was looking at the rising feminist movement, right? The no love movement of these women who were swearing themselves to celibacy. He was looking at that. He's saying, okay, where is radical feminism going to go? A movement against relationships and love. Where is newspeak going to go? A revisionism of language. Where is this whole concept of revisionist history going to go? Well, that's when you get the Ministry of History. Where is this whole censorship apparatus and social justice, or again, like it's politically correct to say this and not to say that. Where is that going to go? It was all imagined based on the things he was watching take place. So it was actually not like that. He was also looking at where you already had communist systems in place. So in Russia at the time, what was the name of the Soviet Union's state-run propaganda apparatus? Question, right? Does anybody know the answer? The Soviet Union's state-run, lying machine was called Pravda. What does Pravda mean? Truth. Truth is lies, right? And of course, the Chinese Communist Party does the same thing now. The old Ministry of Truth. The old Ministry of Truth. Wonderful, right? Funny note, too. Do you know what they call their whole, one of their big censorship systems involving, the security cameras and surveillance and AI? It's called Skynet. You can't make this stuff up. They call it Skynet. Any movie buffs out there knows that's the name of the AI computer system in the Terminator movies, right? Skynet. They call their system Skynet. So they have the Ministry of Truth and they have Skynet. Wonderful. You can't make it up. Let's see. Secret Besserings, you're saying disinformation. Oh, you already talked about it. Tree of Liberty is saying, Josh, the COVID lockdowns created more keyboard cowboys talking trash with no fear of retribution. You know what? That was true. That was true. I mean, they censored us for... look, I was one of those guys, right? For better or for worse, I was one of those guys. And they censored me for it. Like, look, the show you're watching right now, Crossroads, we've been demonetized since January 6th, all right? They've demonetized us and frozen our channel since January 6th. So we're still massively censored. But it is true too. You had two extremes. You had a lot of people shut down, and then you had a lot of people being like, you know what? I don't care if they cancel me anymore. I'm going to say everything I think, and you're going to hear it whether you like it or not. And a lot of people stopped caring. And that's the other, actually I'd say that's the other extreme of it. I'd say the censorship apparatus did two things. It did silence a lot of people. It demonetized a lot. It even debanked a lot of people. But it also had a big effect of causing the opposite. Whereas a lot of people also said, I don't care anymore. I'm going to say everything I think, and I don't care anymore. I would say that was not the majority, though. That was not the majority. You did have a lot of people who did go quiet, but you also had a lot of very vocal people come out. right, I'm just going to say it. I think our community is not representative of the broader public. I'd say that most of us here are probably among the more vocal people. Okay, so we're in a bubble, you know. We're in a more vocal bubble here. If you're watching this show, you're probably a little more of a free thinker. Another question, former fly girl, you're saying, create a personalized echo chamber. This will make people even more immune who cannot face opinions not their own. Yeah, you know, and that's a problem too. You know, there's the old saying, what is it? Was it iron sharpens iron or steel sharpens steel? I can't remember which. Sometimes, okay, look, I was watching some videos talking about, I'm just going to say it, okay? Because people are talking about it, I was watching Tucker Carlson's discussion with Nick Fuentes because people were complaining about it. I know a lot of people are very angry that he had Nick Fuentes on. In my opinion, Tucker actually pushed back on him quite a bit. Tucker actually, if you watch it, Tucker pushed back quite a bit. I didn't find it particularly interesting. I don't really care about half these narratives, to be honest. Like, to me, a lot of this is like non-issue. If you want to talk about like foreign influence, like honestly, like how many countries does America give money to? How many countries do we support the military budgets of? How many countries do we let influence government? Like, China's the biggest, but it's an insane amount. I find a lot of these things to be a narrow vision of the broader picture that don't represent things. And so I think when they get stuck on like, oh, it's this group, they're everything. It's not the case. I don't see the world like that. But they got, part of their conversation got into like, you know, because Nick Fuentes, the allegation, I don't know if it's true, he comes to represent a lot of what they call incels, involuntary celibates, young men who can't find girlfriends, right? I don't know, maybe they're wizards, maybe the celibacy is making them develop like superpowers. I don't know, right? I don't know, but part of my understanding goes to this, because Tucker Carlson was pushing back a bit, and he was saying, no, actually, you know, when you have relationships, yes, it is true that your spouse might challenge you, your spouse might question things, your spouse might criticize you, but it's these things that actually help refine your character. And sometimes having a person you have to live with who you do not understand actually makes you think differently, and it's good for you. It helps develop your character. To former Fly Girl's point, create a personalized echo chamber that'll make people even more immature who cannot face opinions not their own. I find sometimes that when you interact with people who see things differently than you do, whether it's a different opinion or maybe they have a different lifestyle, or maybe their entire worldview is different, or you're talking to a spouse, and women know it. All right, ladies, have you ever had the experience where you want to vent to a man? You talk to your boyfriend or talk to your husband, and you're like, this is wrong, and this is what I'm struggling with, and this is what's bothering me. And he starts offering you solutions. Well, let's fix it by doing this. Let's fix it by doing that. And you're like, that's not what I want. I don't want you to give me solutions. I just want to vent. Guys would say, well, why are you telling me your problems if you don't want solutions? Women would say, I'm not asking for solutions. I just want to vent. I just need someone to talk to. It's a totally different way of thinking, you see? It's a totally different way of thinking. Women don't always want solutions. They just want to talk things out oftentimes. It's the way they think. Guys, when they run into problems, they immediately want solutions. That's how we think, right? We're solution-oriented. But not all conversations are like that. Sometimes they just want to talk. And there's not a reason for it, and they just want to talk. And so I think understanding this is useful. I think understanding this difference in how we communicate is beneficial. I think that if a man can learn this, he will be actually, he'll have more what people call emotional intelligence, right? He'll be a better man. And if a woman can understand this about men, she'll understand guys better and she'll be less offended by them. And, she'll understand that if you want to vent, you're probably better going to another woman. And if you want solutions, you're probably better going to a man, unless the man knows this, right? It's beneficial. I find this is also part of why debate is useful. When you have differences of opinion and you're talking to somebody who does not agree with you, it can be beneficial. I think with myself as well, if I were to stay only in my echo chamber, I only read news outlets that reflect my opinion. I only look at things that reflect what I already believe. I don't read any criticisms of my belief. I will not have a refined belief. I will not have a refined worldview. I think that it's actually the challenges to our worldview, the challenges to our character, the challenges to our opinions that actually refine them in a way where they can withstand that. I think that it's kind of like the hazing process. And without that hazing process, you're going to have a very delicate worldview. And to that point, I think that the lack of that, you're going to have a lot of delicate young men. You're going to have a lot of, and women. You're going to have a lot of fragile people. And fragile people can be dangerous. Fragile people can break. Fragile people can snap. Fragile people can be crazy. And fragile people are not socially adept. They're not going to be able to live well in society because society requires us to be able to live amid different opinions, different beliefs, different ways of life. And if we try to curate reality to not have any of that, I don't know, what kind of society are you creating at that point? You're either creating a homogenous, tribalist society, you're creating an isolationist society, or you're creating a very tiny bubble just for yourself, for your own madness to grow, and you're going to go crazy. I don't think it's healthy for anybody. And so I don't like this AI stuff one bit, because I think it eliminates all those healthy challenges. I think challenge is healthy in my personal worldview. I think challenges refine us. I think it's a good thing. Last question. So last question. I already asked that. All right. I need to get going because I actually have an interview I have to do. Folks, thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm on the road. Those of you new to Crossroads, I'm not just a desktop journalist. I travel a lot. So you'll see me in studio sometimes. You'll see me on the road quite a bit. Again, we have a documentary, a new one coming out November 19th. We're also going to do a live Q&A that day, special in addition to the normal show. So join us again at night for that. Link in the description. I'm also planning to continue doing documentaries like this. In fact, I'm already working on the next one. So you're going to see me on the road quite a bit, traveling quite a bit. And we'll make it look as good as possible. Sometimes we have better setups than other times, so bear with me. But this is also the basis of me not being not just being like a desktop journalist. I'm also, in addition to this show, I'm still the senior investigative reporter for the Epoch Times, and so I have to do investigations. So join me on the road. Join me while I travel, and join me when I'm in office on this show, and join me again. We're not going to do primetime, or I'm not going to do primetime this week, but join it anyways. It's tomorrow night. Or now they canceled it. I'm sorry, didn't have enough people. I apologize. Join me again on Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time for more great episodes, and I will see you then. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.